What is it?
Well, it's called a randomizer, and it's fitted to the guidance systems and operates under a very complex scientific principle called potluck. Now, no one knows where we're going. Not even the Black Guardian.
Not even us.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Randomizer podcast. This is our pilot, so
if we fuck it up, we can ask Sidney Newman for a reshoot, and hopefully he'll say yes. I'm Tim.
And I'm Charles.
And yeah, we're just going to be sort of burbling away about Doctor Who and other things that spin off randomly from that. The initial idea sort of came from enjoying the way that conversations can sort of clatter around all over the place without any particular order. But we do have a plan. Sort
you
of.
think? Okay. So, a plan. Well, okay. So I think probably the first thing we should attempt to talk about is, we have a new Doctor Who.
We do. At time of recording, we have seen Spyfall Part 1. So big spoiler warning for Spyfall if you haven't seen it yet. We have yet to see Part 2. So all speculations will be probably cruelly exposed as the naiveties they are after we see Part 2. So a bit of background. We are both long-term Doctor Who fans. We've known each other for quite a few years. But we have quite differing opinions about season 11, Jodie Whittaker's first season, I think it's fair to say.
We do, yeah.
I was sort of mostly fine with it. I liked some a lot more than others. How would you characterise your opinion of it?
I will... okay, well, I wasn't keen, is the bottom line. I want to put it on the record, though. It's nothing to do with Jodie or any of the cast particularly.
No, Jodie's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I had absolutely no problem with it. It's the writing. I just found it dull, tedious. My litmus test for Doctor Who is if I'm not just having fun watching it, then what's the bloody point?
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. I mean, there were better episodes within it, but even the better ones were not up to a sort of great standard as far as I was concerned. I appreciate that other people enjoyed it. That's fine. But it just really didn't do it for me, I'm afraid.
Whereas Spyfall,
I fucking loved it.
Yeah,
so,
me
too. That's definitely a step in the right direction.
I can't remember being so sort of moment-to-moment thrilled by a Doctor episode for quite a long time, I think, actually. It was very, sort of cinematic and epic. I don't know if it helped. I sort of watched it on a projector rather than on a screen, so it was a big picture. Well. But, I think... it didn't really let up. It had some nice sort of paces, so it didn't feel
That's what I was finding about it. There was... you weren't really getting the chance to sort of catch your breath, which I found really good. I like slow-paced stuff, but there is a time and a place, and I think this one worked particularly well because it was fast-paced, you were interested. I was never bored at all through it.
I think they set out to make a Bond film.
Well, that's pretty obvious. Yeah. They called it fucking Spyfall,
They dropped the fucking before transmission.
That's true. It was the elephant in the room. It was just fun, and that's what I really want for Doctor Who. I always want it to be fun. If it's not fun, really, it just feels pointless. And also, I always find that when Doctor Who's on, even if it's not a brilliant episode, it's still the best thing you've watched all week.
Yes.
And
probably says more about our other televisual habits.
Yeah, probably. But Jodie was fantastic, and I did love the fact that we were nearly 10 minutes into the episode before we saw her.
Yes, that was nice.
I liked the introduction of all the characters again. I thought that was good. I absolutely adored Jodie's introduction, with the
underneath the TARDIS.
I just thought that was
We've never
fun,
seen that before.
It was stupid and silly.
Well,
but that's what I want.
All the cables hanging out.
And it also had a Pertwee thing, because Pertwee's always been that tinker.
Yeah, like having the console out.
You've got Jodie in the first episode of her first series, making the sonic screwdriver, the goggles.
There's that engineer vibe.
So
isn't
I
there?
like that they've kept it. I mean, there was things I liked about last year, but obviously as a whole.
But it's the writing, like you say. I
Yeah.
think, this one had such wit and pace.
Yeah, definitely.
That I had to double check it was still written by the same person.
I think they've all settled into their roles.
Yeah.
She's dialed it back a little. I mean, I did find last year she was wielding the sonic screwdriver, waving it about and stuff.
The swashbuckling flourish.
It was funny at first, but it was like, oh, seriously, put the bloody thing away,
I think so.
This year, no, I mean, okay, we're only one episode in. It's very difficult to judge a season on one episode, but if that's your opener...
Yeah, it's a great opener. And,
it really was.
From the kind of pre-titles into the theme, which, it was a thrill to hear that theme again. I really love this version of the theme. And that's going to be one of our spin-off topics in the future, I think, is just different versions of the theme.
And you noticed that they had a cold open pre-title sequence.
Yeah.
That's come back, and apparently that's going to be...
The standard?
For the standard now. Because funny enough, they realised that people like that.
Yeah. No, it
like
has a
all
feel
the
to
other
it.
things that got thrown out.
Yeah. No, it feels maybe like last year was just sort of, okay, let's, shake the walls of it a bit. And
See, I've always looked at the pre-title sequence in the new series. It's because generally you don't have cliffhangers, apart from obviously
two-parters and
two-parters. So
we should talk about the cliffhanger.
Well, we will, won't we? But the pre-title sequence is your mini cliffhangers,
But your hook.
into the episode, and
Yeah.
it's your hook. And I appreciate that because it still gives you that Doctor Who mini cliffhanger thing. So it's,
And it's that kind of, okay, here we go.
Yeah,
What's happening here
exactly. I
thing.
mean, it's like, although I don't know if you saw Dracula, but their mini hook was hilarious on their first episode.
Do tell spoilers for Dracula.
Yeah, I won't spoil it if you haven't seen
Okay.
it. So
No spoilers for Dracula.
Yeah.
Dracula fans, come back. Hello?
Yay.
Hello? Okay. The what I liked, I mean, sort of trying to vaguely go through it in order, I liked sort of, we've got a little bit more backstory for Yaz, and there's maybe,
Oh, yeah,
I
she had
really,
something to do.
really hope she gets a bit more development this year. Because though, I enjoyed the episodes, I wasn't sort of as doom and gloom about them as you were.
No,
I do definitely share your criticisms of the sort of the writing and the fact that, Yaz is this sort of,
I just thought she was so underused.
she's wasted, yeah. And
I mean, she's a police officer for a start.
Yeah.
You could give her a hell of a lot more to do. And even in this one episode, she seemed to have more to do than she did most of last season.
Yeah.
No,
for sure. It was sort of, it sort of feels like that's been noticed. And I remember right at the start of last season, that there was this sort of tension in the first episode about, well, why doesn't she run to her bosses at the cops? This should be her instinct. And yet,
exactly.
of course, that wouldn't serve the plot.
I mean, I'm not a massive Big Finish fan, but I do know that apparently Tom Baker had a police officer companion, and she had loads to do, and it was just a big Finish were trawling the new series.
Was that since season 11?
Yeah, apparently.
I see.
So, as I say, I'm not...
Well,
So,
they've got some
apologies
ideas.
if I've made a mistake here. I've only just been told of these things, so I don't I like Big Finish, but I don't follow it religiously.
Yeah, so we should look for the Here's How You Should Be Doing It series.
Yeah.
But then carrying on, we got sort of, Graham with a checkup.
Oh, do you know what? I honestly was wondering when they done that, because one of my things last year was I thought that when they mentioned that Graham had cancer a few years ago, they were going to maybe bring that back as a sort of...
Well, it's like Chekhov's gun. If there's a gun in Act 1, it gets fired in Act 4.
Exactly,
So.
and I'm sort of wondering. I will say something else about Graham in a little while, which I found rather funny this series, but we'll
move on.
get to that one.
And then Ryan, of course, the sort of the basketball scene is sort of his mates talking about the excuses for his absences, wearing thin, but the kind of they're not grilling him too much on it. How much time do you think has passed?
I don't know. I mean, if you think about Aliens of London, I mean, it was a year for Rose, wasn't it? So
I think it'd been like not for Rose, but for Jackie and everybody.
yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but it feels like they've been back in Sheffield just getting on with their lives.
Probably they've been back maybe a couple
months,
of months
yeah.
or something, but maybe they'd been away for 6 to 8 months.
So there's a whole Missing Adventures kind of season to be had in the middle there.
Yeah, I'm sure Big Finish will fill a gap at some point.
Jodie Whittaker could run off and get her face in a rock face somewhere. I should mention another spin-off will be that I'm just about to rewatch The Face of Evil for the first time in quite a few years.
I haven't watched that in years.
Yeah, so I am watching the original series in order, and have been inspired to do this by running through corridors. So we're going to have a feature on the show called "Which Corridor Is This?" where I'll talk about that.
Brilliant. Did you know what the original title for Face of Evil was?
Nope.
It was called The Day God Went Mad.
I had heard that.
Which is just such a brilliant title. I really wish that they had the balls to use that one, but never mind.
So the moving on with Spyfall, they all get sort of Men in Blacked into all these limos.
That was quite fun.
It's quite clever, I thought. And then
It was actually. It was quite fun. Although I did sort of when they introduced Ryan, I thought the sort of the white guys in suits coming up. I thought the way that Ryan is it. Yeah, what's the problem? I thought it was quite threatening, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, there's a sort of definitely that kind of authoritarian thing going on. I just went straight to both The Matrix and to
Space.
It's like,
I was
with Mark Gatiss.
Yeah, I was
and who was it? Kevin Eldon was the other.
Yeah, it was actually quite good.
Where they're both sort of riffing on The Matrix very strongly with this.
I did like that. Well, something I said to Connor's my son, when we were watching it was when they were all in the car eventually, the guy that was driving, he sort of reminded me of, oh God, I can't remember the bloody actor's name now. He was the guy that played the bodyguard.
Kevin Costner?
No, the bodyguard, the TV thing with...
yes, with Keely Hawes.
Yeah, he
can't remember either.
Richard Madden. Richard, sorry. And I was thinking, wouldn't it have been brilliant if they'd got him in, that character just for that? But then, of course,
killed by
he
Wing
gets
Mirror, killed by Satnav.
So yeah, I mean that would have buggered up.
That was genuinely quite shocking.
It was
felt
actually. It was quite
really
sort of
perilous.
nasty. It sort of reminded me a little of Halloween 3.
Okay.
Right, it's called Season of the Witch, and it's the one without Michael Myers or anything to do with the previous ones. And there's a bit where a guy is messing about with some piece of technology that's come out of a Halloween mask, and the beam just goes into his mouth, and he sort of, so it had a similar vibe to that. But as I say, I'm a bit of a film aficionado, so I sort of these little things, whether they're intentional or not, I sort of go, oh, that's like, oh.
But it was sudden and shocking, and up the stakes in a huge way.
Yeah, and of course, Atmos has got a hell of a lot more deadly.
Yeah, of course they've done killer satnavs before. So.
Yeah, so but I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's sort of if it works, it works.
I suppose it's that Doctor Who thing of making the everyday threatening as well, which is sort of almost a trope in the programme, I guess. And
that's why when the show came back, and obviously, I mean, everybody was pleased, but then after 5 minutes they stopped being pleased and started moaning about it, as fans tend to do, and they were all moaning about the bin. But I remember my son was only about 6 at the time when that happened, and we were going, I was taking him to school, and they were taking the bins out, and he was looking nervously at them, so I always thought, what, that
it was
works.
The burp. That was
the burp. I mean, the burp, but I mean, kids
well, that's where Doctor Who sort of just walks this tightrope. Is it children's programme playing that for laughs, or is it?
Fans tend to forget. They watched this show when they were 6 or 7, you know what I mean, and the silly things they loved,
absolutely.
And now, but they've been watching it for so long, they own it, and they think, well, no, it should be still made for me and me only.
Well, there's a lot of this, I think, as well in Running Through Corridors. The book as well, with picking up, there are 2 volumes, one for the 60s and one for the 70s, and Rob Shearman and Tobe Hadoke, how do you say it?
Tobe Hadoke.
Hadoke, sorry Toby, if you're not listening. They're sort of striving to be positive as they watch through, which is a lovely thing and a very inspiring thing. But also, a lot of the talk is about that kind of early memory and the sort of feeling of wanting the show to be all grown up when you were a child, in a way that, so that it had gravitas and wasn't just a sort of a silly science fiction series.
Yeah.
So Spyfall continues once they fight off the killer Satnav. We get to London and meet C, who's played by I'm sure I've seen him in something else, that guy.
Yeah, he's vaguely familiar.
Was he... no, it's Stephen Fry. He's going to be one of the biggest names in British entertainment. And I don't know, I sort of had to rack my brains to think, has he not done Doctor Who before?
Well, he hasn't, but he was originally going to write one during Russell T Davies era. And he actually had got, he wrote part of the script, but I basically think he not chickened out, but he'd sort of, he just couldn't bring himself to sort of, get it all together. Yeah. I mean, this time he didn't sort of bugger off to France and change his name or anything, but he wasn't. I think he was just too nervous about it, and it's a damn shame because he's obviously a great writer as well as
I think you got
polymath really.
Part of being a good writer is knowing when to cut as well.
Yeah. But I mean, shame as it is and all that, but it was a nice little performance.
Yes.
Bit too soon though,
I know. I was just like, no, we've only known you a short while.
I know I'm jumping, but it is random, so it's in keeping. The titles, right? The title sequence of just the blobs and everything that we're used to. As I was sitting watching it, and I thought, wouldn't it have been fun if they'd have sort of done a Bond,
with the
silhouettes in it, just for a laugh.
Maybe for part 2.
Just for a laugh. But then I thought, I don't really like them buggering about with the title sequence, so it would have probably annoyed me.
Again, it's the tightrope to walk, isn't it? Between
It's
out pastiche and knowingly.
I always thought in Utopia, for example, when Jack jumps onto the TARDIS in the pre-title
and clings on through the vortex, yeah.
Apparently, and I thought this at the time, but RTD confirmed it, that they had toyed with the idea of the title sequence having Jack on. Which, personally, is hilarious, but it just sort of straddles a fine line, I suppose.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that sounds like it would have been expensive as well. But
another thing about Jack, you need to remind me at some point.
Okay. So the we meet and then lose C very quickly, and all hell breaks loose. And then these creatures, these shiny aliens, they're I think they're visually stunning.
They are.
Both in terms of how they kind of carry the texture of whatever they've stepped through, but then in the kind of the glaring white light that they radiate. Again, it's a visual first. It's really not something that I've seen done before, except maybe Army of Ghosts has a similar echo to it.
Now, here's where my theories kicked in. I did think of the Army of Ghosts thing at the time, but I also thought of something else. Invasion of Time, the Vardens.
So it could be a
reimagining of the Vardens.
Yeah.
Because they are the only species, apart from the Daleks in the Time War, who have invaded Gallifrey. And
were they from another universe, though?
I can't remember quite. I'm actually going to go back and watch the episode, the episodes. But I'm just wondering, because it's sort of... And I looked on Twitter at the time after it, and I put in the Vardens, and other people had
the same thought.
Had the same thoughts, and I thought... And then I went to Gallifrey Base for the first time in a year, that den of iniquity. Sorry. And...
the wretched hive of scum and villainy.
It was a topic.
Right.
So...
It
wasn't just me, and I thought, well, that at least validates that I'm sort of thinking along the same lines, I suppose.
I'm not sure if I'd be disappointed or not. I think it'll all be in the writing again.
I don't think it really matters, but it would be... See, it's like the Vardens weren't a particularly memorable or brilliant enemy, but it's like that Doctor Who thing, isn't it? Do you remember watching Empress of Mars?
Yes.
And when Alpha Centauri...
Yeah,
I was so excited by a character I had absolutely no interest in, but because it was a little nod to the past, that fan thing inside you gets
fan
you know,
service.
you do that little squee,
Yes.
or whatever
Another-
you want to call it.
Another tightrope to be walked. I think,
Yeah,
is fan
so
service.
if it is the Vardens, I'll be like, oh. But,
Yeah,
you know,
I
I don't think it makes that much of a difference.
The thing
but it
that
would
sort
be
of-
interesting.
Sorry, the thing that sort of is sort of slightly sticking with me is they look like they're wearing funny hats.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what that pays off as, whether it's, I don't know, it could be a Cyberman thing if they were...
It could be, but the hats
Or maybe
look
they're
like
wearing
Park
funny hats.
Rangers, so maybe maybe it's like, you know, a Yogi Bear thing or something.
It's like, this one's Yogi and the rest are all boo-boo.
Or maybe it's you know, like the in Arc of Infinity, the Gallifreyan guards,
crest,
you know, with the crest.
Like, part of me hopes it's something
Colin
new.
Bakers.
Because we've got the Master back again, so let's talk about this. Waris Hussein is the Master.
Yes.
I mean, that was quite the twist. I gasped. I actually gasped.
I did actually know.
Did you?
Yeah.
So how
'cause
did...
I sort of heard it on I was watching a live stream and somebody sort of leaked it by accident.
What a shame.
Which, you know, but it didn't work. You know, it was like, oh god, he's, you know, said it, blah blah blah. But it was at the start of the episode when he was introduced as Zoe. I was like, oh fuck, maybe it must be true.
Right.
You know, and I was like, oh. But I didn't expect to hear it this early in the season or for it to happen this early in the season. But do you know what? It didn't really make any difference because it was so brilliant. I absolutely loved the way it was written. That sort of silly, giddy excitedness.
Yeah,
you know?
he's taken that straight out of the John Sim playbook,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
And
definitely. But I'm just hoping it's going to be sort of. I think it'll be a bit more nuanced.
I certainly hope
John Sim, I mean, I personally liked the John Sim thing, but I know a lot of people didn't. But I think this will be a lot more nuanced, and I don't think it's a direct follow-on from Missy. I'm pretty sure
think
that
that's
it's going to be
a leap somewhere.
either Sim to him or maybe even one in the past, because one, why go from Missy to him and then have to go through a long, complicated explanation of how it actually happened and why he was good and he's suddenly evil again, whereas you can just go from a previous master to him and, you know, that's what happened, and you don't really need to explain, well, I'm evil and blah,
There's
blah,
a lot
blah.
of baggage to carry there and to explain. I think it's...
Yeah, I mean, I dare say we'll get some exposition next step.
Well,
I
it
mean,
might
I would
be
imagine...
So you escaped from Castrovalva after all.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Be that
you know,
sort of level of detail.
rather than, you know, having to go in and explain the whole thing with Missy and everything. And also, it kind of shits on the whole Missy arc a
Yeah.
little. Although, I don't know how good or bad the blood is in terms of previous and, you know, Chibnall, because there was a little thing last Christmas Day, you know, a little sort of Instagram dig.
Was there?
Yeah, they were, RTD and Moffat were taking pictures of Daleks and stuff and saying, well, at least this is on Christmas Day and stuff. So, yeah, whatever. But, I mean, that's just pure nonsense in its own way.
I think you don't get to be the runner of a show if you're prone to having entire plot arcs just to spite your predecessors.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just being crushingly naive there.
Well, you never know.
So, summing up for Spyfall, wonderful, wonderful cliffhanger. I mean, we got the companions in a crashing, burning plane, and the Doctor
and
suddenly
the Doctor's
zaps out of it, or
stuck in a carpet.
in a twisty forest. It does look like sort of one of those magnified photos of kind of your macrame carpet or something.
No, that's exactly what I thought. When Yaz got zapped into this, I thought if they shrunk her and put her in a carpet.
Well, shrinking's the Master's thing as well, and they've
Yes.
re-established this, so I would think that might not be a bad call.
Ah,
Because the twistiness of the trees.
yeah, they just looked like carpet fibers.
I was kind of thinking DNA was sort of in
I
there
thought
somewhere.
that at
Because
one
they're talking.
point,
Oh,
but-
we haven't talked about Lenny Henry, who
Oh,
makes
yeah,
a
of
very
course.
creditable Bond villain, I think.
Well, we'll finish on the carpet
Yeah.
fibers and back on to Lenny Henry.
There's a sentence I never thought we would hear.
Yeah.
Wonder if that's our show title.
Yeah. Oh, well. it
Finish
could
the
be.
carpet, then back to Lenny Henry.
That's not a bad one.
I don't
Anyway,
Where is this world? Why did Jazz go and come back? Because that seems sort of in retrospect a bit anticlimactic.
it was a lot. But I did love when he revealed and he was saying, "Come on, catch up."
Yeah.
That
Her
was-
reaction was really interesting. It sort of just seemed crippled with kind of yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It was sort of fear, I think, was in there as well, and obviously great shock. But functionally, for the cliffhanger to build, the Doctor had to be kind of paralyzed for a while. But you know, in other big reveals of the Master, it's been like, oh, you again. But
It's
this
not
one
with
was
that rubbish beard, has he?
yeah, I felt a huge reaction, and maybe partly because of having known O in the past as well.
Yeah, that was quite a sort of nice little thing. I did think, you know, this is I love this whole long game of the Master just to get this reaction, because he basically called him, he sort of got himself to be called O just for her to go, oh, that's what. And I thought that is hilarious. I kind of love that.
Share that commitment to a bad wordplay.
Yeah,
he's running for the plane. Presumably doesn't intend to slip up, or does he? With the sprinting thing, and yet the bomb's presumably already on the cockpit.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. That was the thing about Graham. Graham, cancer survivor and Olympian athlete. When he
because he runs so fast.
he ran for that plane. I was like, they'll never get Graham on there. Oh, they got Graham on,
It's like,
but
hang on now.
O's still, you know. Yeah, great. That was the most unbelievable thing in the entire episode.
That's where credulity broke. So yeah, we loved Spyfall. We're very excited about part 2, and we'll record our thoughts after that.
A man is the sum of his memories, you know. A Time Lord even more so.
So this is the section we're calling Your Cheatin Memory. And we're going to choose a random story using a website called therandomizer.net. This is not ours or associated with us, but it's a lovely site which basically generates a random Doctor Who story. And now we haven't done this beforehand. We don't know what story we're going to get, but my good colleague Chaz is now going to click the link and we will have a story to discuss at random.
Well, please God, don't let it be the mutants.
I'm holding out for Time Lash.
Oh, jeez.
It takes you away.
Oh, for the love of fuck.
So that's Chaz's review.
God.
So we've got a relatively recent one,
Okay.
the Jodie Whittaker one. Now, I've only watched season 11 once,
Yeah,
so
have I.
my memories are sort of slight of this. But this is the Norwegian one?
Yeah.
So,
Norwegian woo.
should we do another one?
No. Well, let's just
Let's just go with it. I don't know if I've got much to say about it, than I
a few
broadly
things.
liked it.
I've got.
It's the one with the frog, isn't it?
Oh, gee, I've got so many things to say.
All right, go.
Okay, where do we start? Okay, well, it starts off okay.
I love the
I will
atmosphere
give
of
that.
it.
I thought, you know, it works quite nice, beautiful setting, etc. Nice little, you know, the girl's very scared. Seems there's something in the woods. I thought, we could have something here. And then we basically get to the point where we enter I suppose the only thing I can call it is the netherworld or something, you know, the sort of that cheap 70s looking place that they go into. It looks like something that was created for Into the Labyrinth. It was so pathetically cheap looking. And then you had Kevin Eldon, who was like, I don't know, I mean,
Gollum.
Yeah, Gollum, but crap makeup, looks rubbish. It just, the whole thing just fell apart then. And then you find out that the whole thing is that the dad who's looking after his daughter after the mother's died has basically abandoned her to sit with the ghost of the mother. I mean, it's like, you know, he's left his kid alone and scared so he can sort of comfort his own memory.
Yeah.
It seems a bit shit.
Now, how self-aware is he with that? Is there there's a sort of bewitchment to it?
I don't think there is, really. Because when Graham sees Grace, you know, I mean, yeah, okay, it's very enticing, the idea of, you know, seeing someone who's died or, you know, thing. But, you know, it doesn't take him long to sort of snap out the idea, you know? And he's, you know, that's his wife, the love of his life, etc. Okay, everybody's slightly different, but it just felt a bit, I don't know, the whole thing, it's like, it's all about memory, it's all about the feelings and the trappings of nostalgia, You know?
But also about human weakness, you know,
True.
the loss of love, and maybe Graham snaps out of it quicker because there's a thread running through New Who particularly, that the people that travel with the Doctor tend to be exceptional in some way, or become exceptional in some way, even if they're sort of ordinary, sort of people off the street. But and you know, it sort of finds its most explicit iteration when the Doctor rejects Adam, the Ninth Doctor, because he's he's abusing. But so maybe Graham's either because of something innate or because of something that's developed in his time with the Doctor. You know, his journey of mourning has enabled him to turn down this very tempting sort of fantasy.
Could be.
I don't know. I just think whatever it was, it didn't sort of stick compellingly for you. And to be honest, for me neither, because you know the sort of memories that I have of it, having watched it once, were kind of visual and the kind of the setting and the atmosphere at the start. Yeah. I think,
as I say, it's the problem with most of the stories last season. They start off really well, most of them, and they seem to have a good concept, and then there always seems to be something gets chucked into the mix that just either stops the plot or just makes absolutely no sense, or and you just think, oh, you were so close. It's like Rosa. Now, I like that on the whole, but why throw in the space racist? You know,
space racist.
I was sitting there throughout that story thinking to myself, all that really says to me is that 30,000 years in the future, there's still going to be racists. There's no hope in that. I think you need it because the Doctor can't engage with the history. Yeah,
but there's an antagonist needed.
I don't think so, because I always think that story could have been easily just a pure historical. Graham, Ryan, and Yaz, he has that encounter with that guy at the start, which was truly shocking when the guy slapped him, and that was quite a, breath moment. But the whole thing is that they need to be on the bus so that she can't sit in the white person's seat, as it were. So really all they had to do was have Ryan or somebody bump into someone and they get hurt, and there were passengers on that bus, so they effectively have to take those people's places. And then you wouldn't have had the space racist plot at all.
Maybe the show's only half an hour long then.
No, I think you could have still, thinged it out with a bit more of Martin Luther King and stuff like that. It's just, he is talking about wanting to do historicals. Now, that's what they used to call a pseudo-historical, because you always have a spacey element. So why not just, if you're going to do it, go balls in, for one of the word, and do a historical. I would have appreciated that more. I mean, Demons of the Punjab was more or less a pure historical with that sort of little, which I actually thought they were lovely, beautiful looking creatures, and I thought the plot was nice, although too similar in terms of what they were doing to Twice Upon a Time, with Testimony.
Right, yes.
There's a lot of similarities, but, whatever. I mean, that's Doctor Who in general.
Yeah.
But getting back to this, it had some good points, but then the fucking frog. I mean, for a start, right now, I don't get it. You have the frog is basically the universe with Grace's voice. Frogs were Grace's thing and Graham's thing, I suppose, whatever. And the Doctor is tempted. Now, to me, Chekhov's gun was introduced at the very start of the episode. The Doctor, for quite a lot of the time, was talking about her grandmother. Now, to me, it would have made more sense if it had been her grandmother. That would have been more compelling visually, and also it would have made more logical sense that her grandmother was the one that was, And I just think if they'd have done that, I could have forgiven a lot more.
Right.
But I just thought,
It had a stronger payoff. So
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I was very
and it
taken
all
aback.
seems very
I remember
weak.
that.
It's like, you know, I don't dislike Chibnall. I just think he's very weak on payoff. A lot.
Yeah.
You know, I love Power of Three, but it's one of the weakest endings I've ever seen. It was just an unusual story, and I quite liked it. You know, it was cute and sort of weird.
It felt exotic.
Yeah.
Not kind of
But
alien
then
exotic.
you know, it didn't feel sort of like a massive threat, but it just felt interesting, you know. And then suddenly, you know, the payoff is so damn weak.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And
So-
that's what this felt like, and that's what it felt like a lot of the season for me. I think that's, you know, I genuinely didn't want to dislike it. I wanted to enjoy it, and I'm so fucking happy that I'm enjoying
Spyfall.
this because I don't want to dislike it. I don't want to be the guy that's moaning about it all
Yeah.
the time, because that's what it feels like.
And
I
whatever,
just can't
we want it to be
say
good.
I like
you
it
know.
when I don't.
We just want it to be good.
Yeah.
So that was our first random story. Now the second and harder part, at least for my colleague here, is that we now have to go and watch this episode.
Oh Jesus, really?
I didn't explain that part of the format to
Oh
you.
God.
So we have to watch this and then comment on it, having revisited it. Or at least I do, because I only watched it the one time.
No, I'll watch it.
Okay.
Please, if you know, I'm willing to suffer for my art.
I'm glad to hear it, and I'm here to make sure you do.
Cardinal Barusa, if you can spare a moment, sir.
Yes?
Public register video.
We have just recently been treated to all of classic Doctor Who, or at least most of classic Doctor
Yes.
Who, through a new streaming service called Britbox, which is basically a collaboration between the BBC and ITV to
Channel 5.
on Channel 5. Yes, I had forgotten about them.
Yeah,
So it's stuffed full of quite a lot of old television from the 90s and earlier. I've been watching old episodes of Cracker on it since it launched.
I've been watching One Foot in the Grave.
Right. But on Boxing Day, the entirety of the complete classic Doctor Who stories.
Not quite.
Not quite?
Not quite. Reign of Terror, isn't there?
Really?
Yeah, seriously. I know. Bit weird. There's a few, but, you know.
I wonder why that is.
I think they're all going to eventually come. What I was actually particularly surprised by, the random episodes are there as well. You know, like missing...
the scattered missing episodes. Yeah.
You know, like The Crusade and Celestial Toymaker, etc.
I think they sort of copied the format of the DVD releases of
Yeah.
putting them in a kind of little group in a corner.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was actually quite nice. I was surprised they did it, but definitely appreciated it.
So we want to talk about our impressions of Britbox, and I think I had an early sort of a fairly bad experience watching some old Cracker episodes, one of which was just in the wrong aspect ratio. The picture was the wrong shape. And on others, the sound mix was terrible. It was kind of almost impossible to hear the dialogue underneath the sort of sound effect track. So I think the Doctor Who ones, I've so far watched just a couple. I've watched Mask of Mandragora and Deadly Assassin, because this ties in with my Running Through Corridors inspired rewatch of the show, and this is where I had got to when Britbox launched its Doctor Who section.
Also makes it quite easier for you now when
Yeah.
you're
When I'm
you're
out and about.
You don't have to lug about a
Well,
hard
it doesn't,
drive and all that.
because
Oh.
what they don't do at the moment is downloads.
Oh, of
So you have to
course,
be
yeah.
online to watch something, which is one limitation. But I know services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, which they're competing with,
Yeah.
have the ability to download episodes.
I mean, it is a very new service, so
Yes.
I suspect all these things will eventually sort of become standard
I hope
within
so.
it. But,
The other thing I'm deploring is the lack of subtitles.
yeah, it's a bit weird. I mean, I tend to watch everything with subtitles.
Yeah.
It's some...
So we're both old and getting deaf. But
Yeah, well...
It also-
Yeah. But my thing with subtitles is I used to do it because, as I say, I like film a lot. So what I did was... I wouldn't watch foreign films for years, you know, because so I started watching everything with subtitles, so that now when a foreign film comes out, it makes absolutely no difference now, because I'm so used to following the subtitles. You know, it was a sort of tricking my brain into
Yes.
getting into that idea. You know,
That was a commitment to watching foreign films over
just
years.
tell you a little joke about my aunt. She used to watch everything with subtitles as well. When she lived in her previous house, she had someone living above her, so she always used to basically keep the sound down and just watch everything with subtitles. I
That's very
walked in
considerate.
one day. It was very considerate, but seriously, have some sound. She was watching X Factor.
The singing show.
Subtitles.
Enjoying those lyrics.
I walked in and I went, "What are you doing?" And she went, "I'm watching it." I said, "How the fuck can you watch it with subtitles?" I mean, the whole point is to, you know,
Last
listen
night
to
at the
what they're
proms
saying.
would be
Yeah.
spectacular as well,
She's
wouldn't it?
going, "Oh, you get the gist of it." And I was
But she's clearly been in it for the dance routines or whatever.
it's absolutely brilliant.
For me, the subtitles are, because my hearing is quite poor, and sometimes I struggle with the mix between.
Which is ironic because you know how bad my eyesight is. And
Yes.
I'm struggling,
What a pair.
struggling to read subtitles.
Yeah. I think also just, you know, sort of for people who are actually deaf, it's really shocking that a service doesn't have
Yeah.
full subtitles.
Well, when you consider how sort of, you know, the BBC were pioneers.
Yeah.
Because they were one of the first people to do audio description on the Doctor Who DVDs and
Yeah.
everything like that. That's all standard.
I'm surprised it's not legally mandated, to be
Yeah,
honest. And maybe
It is a
maybe
bit
it's in the
strange.
pipeline. Who knows? 'Cause
Yeah.
some of them do. Because I've been watching Blackadder 3 on Britbox, and it has subtitles, closed captions.
Yeah, as I say, I suspect a lot of these things are just they're eventually going to get everything done.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a case of they wanted to get these released quickly, because the thing I noticed is with you get the free trial and everything, so it's like a month, etc. But they were advertising Doctor Who, so I initially done the free trial, and then where's Doctor
Yeah,
Who?
me too.
I was like,
Yeah.
it's not coming till
books
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get that out as quickly as possible because it's a 600 episode dump. But one of my hopes is that as it's BBC archive, we truly get archive, as in there's so much 70s kids shows. You know, you could go back and get things like ITV Tomorrow People, Blake 7, The Survivors, you know, all these sort of like 70s and 80s and whatever cult shows.
It'd certainly be
Avengers.
hopeful for anything that's had a DVD release.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
could come to it. And
I mean, it'd be fantastic. It
Yeah.
would be absolutely fantastic to be able to see these things. I mean, there's so many, you know, worthwhile shows out there, and not just things like that. I mean, Play for Today. You imagine being able to access all of those, or even
Rama,
old,
I'd be right back there.
or even Old World in Actions, or you know, stuff like that.
you were observing that it's hard to sort of navigate to a single episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'm just got it wrong, but I've got it on my TV. I've got it on the phone. I mean, I've not really explored it too much, but as I had said previously, when my idea of the Vardens and
You went looking.
Spyfall,
Yeah.
I sort of thought, I'll have a quick look at Invasion of Time, you know, and I sort of found that I couldn't home in on an episode. It only gave you the story, you click it and it goes to episode 1.
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be anywhere where you could skip on to episode 5
The way
or
you can
episode
with
this.
Netflix and
Yeah.
whatnot.
I mean, there was a fast forward button, but it's literally just a case of fast forwarding through everyone. As I say, I haven't fully explored it. It was
Might
basically,
depend on how you
yeah, it was
access
basically
it as
my
well.
laziness today. I mean, I was sort of half snoozing on the sofa, so didn't really make a, you know, concerted effort.
Yeah.
So I
That's
might be
the
wrong.
level of sort of research and commitment that we're going to bring to this podcast. as we
Absolutely,
go
yeah. I
forward.
mean, if you want us to watch anything or do anything, I will put that amount of commitment in. Where
Especially
I
if it's
basically
season
just
11.
cannot be arsed with doing most of it. So, I mean, obviously, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. No, and it has its own section in the
Yeah,
in
and
the top menu,
also I
which is a
quite like
wonderful
the
thing.
artwork they've used as well.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. I'm assuming what will happen is that the new series will come along as well once they the Netflix deal you know,
lapses.
and
Yeah.
you'll get most of these shows once, because they've obviously got things like I don't know, Blackadder or whatever, you know, on other streaming services. So I would imagine these will all cut ties eventually to be.
The
know.
reason I was watching Blackadder 3 on Britbox was because it's not on Netflix.
Well, that's
and
what.
I think what I've read is that the future is not so rosy for consumers because a lot of the streaming services are going to fragment.
Yeah, so you're basically going to get the situation you had before the streaming services came out. It's just going to be a case of, well, you watched that, you know, you had cable packages and you watched this and you watched that. Then the streaming services came out, so you were able to get rid of your cable because, well, this is it, everyone's in one place, and now it's just going to go the same way.
Yeah.
So if you want to watch The Mandalorian, you have to have Disney Plus. If you want to watch Blackadder, you have to have Britbox. If you want to watch House of Cards, you need to get Netflix. So you end up with about 10 streaming services, which
Yeah, it's no good for
kind of
consumers.
just defeats the point.
Seems to be the way it's headed, sadly.
And it's silly, and I found that illegal downloading basically started to tail off once you had the likes of Netflix and some other streaming services, because it was easier for people to just watch these things than go through all the hassle of downloading it. You know, I mean, what difference does it make? And it's basically going to be a case now that people are just going to go back to illegal downloading, I think.
These corridors all look the same.
We're going to talk about where I'm at in my rewatch of the original series. A bit of background about it. So Rob Shearman and Tobe Hadoke have a book called Running Through Corridors. They have a volume for the 60s and a volume for the 70s, and I'm really, really hoping they get around to writing the volume for the 80s, because I've enjoyed this book very much and found it inspired me to go back and actually watch the series through from the beginning. And I had never watched like the reconstructions or many of the missing episodes, and even some of Tom Baker's stories I've never actually seen. Not for lack of opportunity in these days of the internet, but more because of just having other things to do and not having had that completist vibe.
Didn't realise you hadn't watched some of the Tom Baker stories.
There's only a couple. I don't think I've ever seen Underworld. I think I've watched bits of Horns of Nimon, and because these stories don't have great reputations, it's also maybe I've not been so keen to rush out and see them.
Horns of Nimon's, I mean, it's not what you would call good, but it's
it's legendary.
Fun.
Yeah,
You
you
know
know.
what I mean?
All of that sort of season, what is that, season
17
stuff, that's where there's a lot of grey areas for me. So I'm fast approaching there because I've just watched The Deadly Assassin. So I've been, I've really enjoyed sort of coming through the Hartnell years and into Troughton, and watched the sort of loose canon reconstructions of a lot of these. And another thing, just to go back to Britbox, is that they have the animated versions of some of those missing stories as well.
Yeah.
So I'm
That's
going to
pretty
rewatch Power of the Daleks.
Yeah, and they've also got Macro Terror.
Lovely.
And I would imagine at some point the Faceless ones will drop there, but I would imagine they want to sell the DVDs first.
So I've made my way through the John Pertwee area, and again there were certain stories I hadn't seen before, like the Mutants, Chaz's favourite story.
No.
We're gonna have to hope that comes up on the randomizer one episode. But the early Tom Baker seasons I was very familiar with, partly because when I was younger they were broadcast on what was then called BSB, I think it was, the early satellite television. Repeated a lot of season 12, season 13 and so on.
So you never saw them on first broadcast, huh?
No, my earliest memory was later Tom Baker. I think I can trace it to Destiny of the Daleks or City of Death.
My earliest memory is the Sea Devils.
Right. So you're that little bit older than me.
Yeah.
But
Right, so.
I was also very familiar with The Deadly Assassin, having watched that several times, but not for a good few years. And coming at it in context, this is the other great thing that these books do, is they sort of remind you of what it might have been like to encounter these stories in the context of what had gone before, without all the foreknowledge. So this is really an amazing sort of fanish story in the sense of suddenly this mysterious society of the Time Lords is laid bare.
Yeah, actually, because it is the first time we ever visit Galbraith.
For any length of time, you get sort of glimpses of people at consoles.
Yeah, of course, in the Three Doctors, we sort of get that sort of lit in
the trial scene at the end of War Games. But this is the first time you get any sense of what it's like day to day. And it's sort of, for me, I remember feeling like there's a sort of political satire going on. You've got a kind of political reporter character talking to a stand-in for TV.
It is influenced by film The Manchurian Candidate.
Yes, Robert Holmes was quite keen to sort of have a satirical edge to some of the depictions of Time
I think
Lords.
everything Robert Holmes did was influenced by something, let's be honest. But
yeah, well, I guess nobody's work isn't. But the so it had one of those sort of devices which occasionally breaks my suspension of disbelief, which was that it needed something that was essentially TV for the Doctor to watch. So you have the public access video cast or something. And these things creak a little bit after the years. But as a narrative device, you quickly sort of forget about it and move on. But more interesting, perhaps, is the kind of the sort of machinations of power that you get a glimpse into. This stuffy and staid society that the Doctor ran away from.
The sort of they're very unbending.
Yes.
In what they, it's like that thing of they're so advanced they don't need to advance anymore, so they stagnate.
Yeah, you can almost see the dust on some of them. Yeah, and on Barusa's upper lip, I think, is particularly kind of dusty. But it also has some of the most wonderful characters. So,
the Castellan.
Castellan, Spandrel, and Engen. A spandrel is the bit either side of an arch, either side of the curved part of an arch, which is, I don't know if that's a meaningful character trait.
As opposed to Spangles.
Spangles. Well, maybe it's because he's a supporting role. I don't know. Castellan Spangles was another episode, I think.
That's true.
He was Closet Varden, perhaps.
They're sort of your classic Robert Holmes thing, though, aren't they?
The double act.
He always had the double acts, and to be honest, they were always pretty much the joy of the episode.
Yeah, for sure. And there's I've always held in my head the moment of Tom Baker saying goodbye. Oh, goodbye, Engen, goodbye. It's a very kind of sweet moment with such eccentric kind of actors and performances, and Spandrel's kind of European accents. But
this is also the one really where Tom Baker slightly got his wish, wasn't it? Not to have a companion.
Yes. And to sort of dominate for a while, but Spandrel sort of slips into that role, or at least as a sort of counterpoint for the Doctor. But it's a great story.
It is, actually. I mean, it's a lot of fun. The interesting thing was, up until that point, obviously, Roger Delgado had played the Master.
Yes.
And he was always very much a sort of slightly moustache twirling, but gentleman villain for the Doctor, and this he's more visceral. He's there's a lot of hatred in this.
So there's a reinvention of the character, and the sort of the twisted form, the kind of decayed corpse-like Master is, I think, more of a kind of a Machiavellian sort of plotter, and has this kind of sort of destroy everything for power kind of feel.
I kind of liked that, and it felt exciting because obviously it'd been so long since Master had been around, and it was a surprise as well. I mean, it was a hell of a surprise
for me watching it for the first time. I don't remember when I first saw it, but I had seen Keeper of Traken, possibly seen it more than once before I saw Deadly Cousin. The version of the Master in Keeper of Traken is sort of a follow-on act to this. So for me, I kind of saw them the wrong way round, and I'd had the kind of, I think,
because the actor that plays him in this one's Peter Pratt.
Yes,
I think he was an opera singer or something.
Right. Yeah, sort of. There's certainly a kind of operatic feel to the last act with the
Phantom.
I think the overriding thing that I took away from it this time was just how much the sort of scenes in the Matrix sort of completely inflect the sort of studio bound Time Lord version of it, and you've suddenly got this really quite gritty outdoors chase through the forest.
It really is surreal. the whole Matrix. But I absolutely loved that. I mean, you had the clown thing.
Yes.
The
They're
whole
wiping away the dirt.
goth with a,
But sort of the surrealism kind of goes quite quickly. And this is, again, it's observed in the book, because what I've been doing is rereading the entries for each story after I've watched the story to see what the two authors have been thinking. They made the very good point that actually it starts off with all this kind of fantasy Matrix stuff, and they compare that unfavourably to The Ultimate Foe. But it sort of soon just becomes a fight to the death, or a predator and prey.
Yeah,
and of course the infamous drowning scene, which
one where Mary Whitehouse lost her.
Well, I was interested to see if Britbox had the censored version of that, and they don't. You do. I think see the sort of full release of it.
Come on, if you're tired of being unit scientific advisor, you can always resign.
So this section is called Ask Dr. Schultz. So we have a scientific advisor for the program because, of course, you need one. And but obviously, Doctor Who science fiction. There's a lot of kind of ideas that have some basis in the reality of real science in the world. And of course, science fiction also gets called speculative fiction. So everybody drones on about how Star Trek predicted the mobile phone and so on. But what we wanted to do is to ask Dr. Schultz, our scientific expert, about just the sort of the idea of time travel itself. We may as well go with a central theme to the show to start with. So welcome, Dr. Schultz. And could you just tell us what you think about the idea of travelling through time?
Well, of course, this is completely implausible.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz, and we'll hear more from you another week.
What's happened? Could it have been affected by tangential deviation coming out of the warp ellipse?
In the true sense of having a podcast with random topics, we're going to pick up on something Chaz mentioned earlier about Captain Jack.
Yeah, it was just basically the whole Face of Bo thing.
Yes.
You know, how he was called, Face of Bo, they called me, etc. And it had been like speculated, well, how this would happen and how this wouldn't happen. And it's apparently, it's very difficult to know if it's 100% true or not, but apparently one of the initial ideas was that Jack was originally going to appear in Good Man Goes to War.
Yeah.
Now, he was supposedly, instead of, the bald guy?
Yeah, the blue guy.
Yeah. So he was supposed to replace him or something, but I suspect that if you notice the section where they pick up Strax, the Sontaran, there's a commander there, very dressed like Jack. So I suspect that maybe there was something to do there, but the idea was that Jack was going to appear, and Jack was the one that would get beheaded and left in the box.
That makes sense.
And the head would grow into the Face of Bo.
And actually, the character arc's very consistent with that, because his head does get bigger and bigger.
Yes, very much. I'm pretty sure it was a genuine idea. But they sort of, I don't know, they couldn't get him or whatever happened.
Well, you can see how that would join the dots quite nicely.
You know, and it does fit in with the sort of Stephen Moffat idea of filling every gap in continuity that is humanly possible. You know, I mean, I've never. He's like the little Dutch boy, isn't he? Putting his finger in the dike. You know, he's not.
There's a lot of fingers. They have,
yeah.
No, and if Doctor Who is a very leaky brick wall, if nothing else. I think it's a sweet arc, though, the Face of Bo, and a lovely payoff.
I like it. I think it's really good fun, and you know, whether or not it's definite or not, it doesn't really matter. It's just one of those things that it kind of works quite nicely, and it kind of works that it's sort of loose. As I say, Stephen Moffat does seem to have an obsession with filling continuity gaps, which I love about. I love the fact that Stephen Moffat, as talented as he is basically
Still a
the
fan.
world's worst fanboy.
Yeah, still a
You know what I
fan.
mean? He's
It's such
so,
an impulsive
he
fandom, isn't
he
it?
obviously gets such a turn on for, oh yeah, well that happened in episode 6 of the Sensorite, so I'm going to make sure that this.
How did the Master
we
escape from
explain
Castle
it.
Malva? Yeah.
I mean, you only need to look at, say, Twice Upon a Time, you know. I mean, I know it's not your favourite, but the fact that it starts off previously on Doctor Who, 710 episodes. I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah.
That's just that's just pure fan indulgence.
Yes.
And I know that, you know, a lot of people, I kind of love that, you know, because you don't do it all the time, and when it's done, you just sit there and you can giggle to yourself. You're the only one that probably gets it in the room, but it doesn't matter.
I remember seeing a tweet by Moffat once while he was still showrunner, and it was just, "This monster will scare you." Oh, yes. And I've never quite gone back to try and piece together the timing of what monster that might be.
Oh, I think that was...
I mean, there's so many candidates.
Yeah, but I
Silence
actually
could-
think it was the Prisoner Zero thing, you know, the corner of the eye.
Oh, Prisoner Zero and
Yeah,
11th Hour.
yeah,
I think it was later than that. I think he was showrunner already.
Oh, right.
So it would have been one of his later seasons.
Yeah.
I was vaguely thinking it might have been possible for it to be the Silence.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's another
That was a great
brilliant
idea,
concept.
wasn't
And Moffat was so good at just having that kind of, you know, I mean, the everyday made extraordinary, but also the just the kind of creepy. I'm trying to phrase this right. It's an idea that's just simple but innately
Yeah.
terrifying, like,
like
the statue that moves
corner
when you
of the
close your
eye.
eyes. Yeah. I think we should wrap up there. I think we've had a sort of stumbling around random first episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you exist if you've listened. And even if you haven't, it's been fun just chattering away. And
Into the void.
yes, we are now going to dematerialize. Until
Okay.
next time.
Right, well, goodbye.